I was at the Somerset Hotel in downtown Brighton near the state capital. It was 9 p.m. on a Thursday, and I was there not as a guest but to find my wife. She was there with her boyfriend. She didn't know I knew, but I did. I'd known for a while, and it ate at me daily. I had to act. I thought long and hard about what to do. I tolerated her affair for months, hoping it would end. It didn't. Leah kept seeing Colin Dempsey while pretending to be a loyal wife. Our talks about future plans were lies. I wondered what I did wrong, why she turned to another man. Clearly, I wasn't enough for her anymore. I tried to let her have her fun, hoping she'd come back to me, but once she tasted life with another man, she wouldn't return. After months with no change, I decided to end it. It took time to accept this. I work long hours, often 18-hour days. Was this why she sought another man? Was I neglecting her? I didn't think so, but something was wrong. Why didn't she talk to me? If I wasn't meeting her needs, why not just leave? Instead, she kept a boyfriend and lied, saying she loved me. Why not end it maturely with a divorce? Too many questions, not enough answers. I devised a plan, not perfect, but one I could live with. I wasn't there to be violent, it wasn't worth it. I wouldn't punch out her boyfriend. My lawyer warned against it. I'd end up in jail. No, I was there to end our relationship and maybe give her a moment of misery. You want to know about me? I'm Nathan Parker, 31, born and raised in Brighton. I'm an emergency room physician. I used to work at the main hospital. I have a mother, father, and brother nearby. I also have a wife. I recently took a leave of absence to recover from burnout. My own doctor advised it. I haven't told my wife because she doesn't care. I needed rest, especially after discovering her affair. My wife is Leah Parker, née Hargrove. She's 30 and works for a national bank. We live in a nice 2-bedroom apartment near the hospital. No kids, thank goodness. Leah is 5 feet 8 inches, with long brunette hair and very attractive. She catches men's attention easily. We met at university in an English class. I liked her from the start. I asked her out, and we were together until today. After university, we lived together for almost 2 years and married after I finished medical school. I avoided huge debts thanks to my parents' help and worked hard every summer to earn money. My family is doing well. My father runs a successful construction business with over 100 employees. I worked for him in the summers to pay for tuition. I know hard work. Now I work 18-hour hospital shifts and am on call on my days off. But you don't care about that, you want to know what's happening at the Somerset with my wife. Well, it's about to unfold. I've known about her boyfriend for a while now. Why haven't I acted? It's a fair question. I went through stages of grieving my marriage before deciding. At first, I was shocked Leah was cheating. I thought we were a team with shared dreams and plans. We even talked about having kids and looked at houses in the suburbs. We opened a savings account for a down payment and baby expenses. My salary as an ER doctor was growing rapidly, and Leah earned well at the bank. We were financially stable with a bright future. I discovered Leah's affair by accident. A nurse from the ER saw her with Colin at a restaurant. Leah and Colin had been seeing each other for almost 2 years, and when I found out, I was devastated. I watched them enter the hotel and head for the elevators. They went to the 12th floor. I sat and reviewed my plan, knowing I needed to address this disrespect. I went to the front desk and asked to call Colin Dempsey's room. Colin is a local business owner with a wife and 2 sons. He was having an affair with my wife, who was his loan officer. When I found out, I couldn't believe the extent of her infidelity. A nurse at work mentioned seeing Leah and Colin together. The cat was out of the bag. A few days later, I casually mentioned to Leah that Rhonda, the nurse, had seen her at a restaurant with a friend. Leah's face went pale but recovered quickly. The following week, I talked to my father about what to do. He was shocked and disappointed. We came up with a basic plan to protect myself. I also spoke with my supervisor at the hospital. She agreed I needed a vacation to deal with the situation. I even met with the in-house psychiatrist, who recommended time off to recuperate. My next step was to hire an investigative agency to find out what Leah was up to. Within a week, they had a clear picture of her and Colin Dempsey's activities, including the hotels they frequented. A discreet bribe to a hotel clerk revealed that Colin had been renting a room almost weekly for the past 2 years, often with the same woman, Leah. I then withdrew all the money I could from my bank account and prepared to confront the situation. I knew Leah would meet Colin after work, thinking I was on a long shift. As soon as she left, I packed my essentials, loaded my bike, and arranged for my dad to pick up my car later. I packed lightly for the road, just clothes, a toothbrush, rain gear, and my iPad. My bike, a 2016 Honda Africa Twin, was equipped for long-distance travel. My plan was to tour North America, avoiding freeways and staying in small hotels and bed and breakfasts. I mapped out a route through New England, Canada, and across the US, hoping this journey would help me move on. But before leaving, I had to deal with Leah and her affair. I approached the hotel desk and asked to speak to Colin Dempsey. The clerk called his room, and I took the phone. "May I speak to Leah Parker, please?" I asked. "There's no one here by that name," Colin replied, his voice faltering. "Just tell her there's been a death in the family." "Tell her Nathan Parker died today," I said firmly. I hung up, handed the phone back to the wide-eyed receptionist, smiled, and left the hotel. Outside, I waited on my motorcycle. Leah soon ran out, not seeing me, and got into a cab, likely heading to our apartment, now hers. I, on the other hand, was heading toward freedom. Leah's perspective. "Oh my God," I thought, panicked. Someone called Colin, saying Nathan was dead. I needed to get home right away. Dressing quickly, I ran to the elevator and grabbed a cab. Once home, I rushed into the apartment, struggling with the key, and searched for Nathan. He wasn't there. Catching my breath, I saw an envelope with my name on it. Inside was a note and Nathan's wedding ring. He knew. The note read, "Leah. Consider me dead. Our marriage has been dead for a long time. I took what I wanted, the rest is yours. I told the management company I'm no longer living here. You can decide whether to stay or move. Don't look for me. I'm taking a break from work, life, and your affair with Colin. You're no longer interested in being married to me. Enjoy your life. Nathan. My attorney will contact you soon with further information." What am I going to do now? I never thought Nathan would find out about Colin. Our affair was just for fun. Nathan worked so hard, and we had little closeness. I was lonely and thought we could still be a normal family one day. But that plan is ruined. Colin was charming, and it was easy to get infatuated with him. I thought seeing him once or twice a week wouldn't affect my marriage. I tried calling Nathan, but his number was disconnected. I called his parents. His father told me Nathan had left and to go to hell. Looking around the apartment, I saw most of Nathan's things were gone. His closet was empty, and a few books were missing. Black garbage bags in the kitchen were filled with items he left behind. I was devastated. I decided to visit his family the next day to understand what I'd gotten into. I called his friends, but they hadn't seen him in weeks. No one answered at his brother's house. Frustrated, I poured a glass of wine and sat at the table, staring at the note and wedding ring. I knew I had screwed up big time and that fixing this would be painful. Nathan's perspective. That first night, I didn't travel far. Around 10 p.m., I saw Leah run out of the Somerset Hotel and into a cab. She thought I was working in the ER and would be there until tomorrow, giving her plenty of time with her boyfriend before coming home. I started my bike, an Africa Twin with a 6-speed automatic transmission, perfect for long rides with minimal fatigue. I'm always careful when I ride, staying aware of my surroundings. I've seen too many accidents in the ER caused by reckless riding. I've witnessed kids die because of their actions on motorcycles. My destination was close by, the Holiday Inn Express east of the river. Exhausted both physically and mentally, I checked in, eager for a meal, a hot shower, and a good night's sleep. This hotel marked the end of my marriage and the start of my new adventure. How fitting and ironic. Leah's perspective. The next morning, I left the apartment early and drove to Nathan's parents' house. Seeing Nathan's car in front of the garage, I hoped he was there. Miriam, his mother, answered the door, saw me, and immediately slammed it shut. I rang the doorbell repeatedly until John, Nathan's father, answered. "What the hell do you want?" he demanded. "Please, John, I need to talk to Nathan." "Just ask him to come out," I pleaded. "You're too late. He left Brighton last night. I don't know where he is, and even if I did, I wouldn't tell you." "John, I need to explain everything to him. We can work through this," I insisted. "You've had an affair and expect him to forgive you?" "Get off my doorstep," he said, slamming the door. I sat on the step, unsure what to do. I rang the doorbell again and begged John to tell Nathan to call me, but he closed the door without another word. Returning to the apartment, I found a letter from Nathan's attorney. It stated I had been dropped from his health insurance, our financial assets were divided, and his life insurance beneficiaries were now his parents. The letter advised that any correspondence to Nathan should go through his attorney. Under New York law, I could sue for divorce after a year of abandonment. Realizing my marriage was over, I spent the weekend trying to contact Nathan's family, friends, and coworkers, even going to the hospital. An ER nurse, Rhonda, said she had seen me with Colin and told Nathan everything. Leah's perspective. Rhonda, the ER nurse who had exposed my affair to Nathan, offered me a drink when I visited her. She shared what little she knew about Colin Dempsey, adding that everyone at the hospital knew Nathan wouldn't be returning to work for a while. I left her place feeling the weight of my ruined marriage and the consequences I now had to face. Nathan's perspective. Newfoundland is a stunning province, filled with breathtaking scenery and warm, friendly people. I spent over a week exploring the island, relishing the views, the locals, and the food. On the Avalon Peninsula, I even encountered a moose on the road and managed to avoid it. Thankfully, I had been warned about the danger and only drove during the day. In Petty Harbor, after visiting Cape Spear, I got a flat tire. Remarkably, 4 people stopped to offer help, a stark contrast to how things were back in Brighton. The Canadian Auto Club, CABA, sent a tow truck to take my bike to a repair shop in St. John's. While my bike was being fixed, I stayed at a small hotel in the city, which turned out to be a perfect place to rest, do laundry, and recharge. The hotel was clean, with a cozy bar and restaurant. At the repair shop, I met Emma Pfizer, a German woman traveling across the country on her motorcycle, with plans to head to Morocco next. We struck up a conversation about our travels and agreed to have dinner together at a place called the Salty Cod. That night, we shared a wonderful evening, and the next morning, I woke up with her beside me. Emma was stunning, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt amazing. We spent the day together, discussing our travel plans. Emma had already covered over 40,000 miles and was planning to ride around the coast of Africa. Her journey sounded far more adventurous than mine. It inspired me to consider a change. I called my parents to discuss the idea of going to Africa instead of continuing my North American route. They supported my decision wholeheartedly, telling me to do whatever made me happy. My father's words from my childhood came to mind: fathers are where their children's dreams go to die. I hadn't understood the humor, or the bittersweet truth, of it until I grew up. Emma's perspective. When Nathan expressed interest in joining me on the African leg of my trip, I decided to learn more about him. I called a friend in Berlin whose husband works for the German police. With his help, I confirmed that Nathan Parker from Brighton, New York, was who he claimed to be. Nathan was an ER physician at Brighton General Hospital, currently on sabbatical for 3 to 6 months. He came from a prominent family and had recently divorced after his wife had an affair. He graduated at the top of his medical school class and had no children. My friend even sent me a picture to confirm it was the same Nathan Parker. With that information, I felt reassured. Having a doctor along on such a challenging journey would be invaluable. Still, I understood Nathan's emotional state. His wife's betrayal had likely prompted his long solo trip. I, too, had ended a relationship after discovering my partner's infidelity, so I empathized with him. Traveling alone has its perks. You can go wherever and whenever you want, but it can be lonely. After months on the road and over 30,000 miles, I planned to write a book about my experiences as a solo female motorcycle traveler, complete with photos, videos, and a detailed diary. A friend had even suggested I share some videos on YouTube. Nathan had a lot to learn about long-distance motorcycle travel, starting with proper gear. I called a motorcycle store in Casablanca, which had most of what he would need. They also knew other suppliers who could cover the rest. It would be interesting to travel with Dr. Nathan Parker. I hoped I could be a good guide. Leah's perspective. Nathan's parents made it clear they wanted nothing to do with me. They refused to talk or tell me where he was. It was becoming painfully obvious that our marriage was over, but I was unsure if I should file for divorce first. What if he came back wanting to repair our marriage? Could he ever trust me again? Colin, on the other hand, had ended things, fearing his wife was starting to suspect the affair and might hire an investigator. His departure left me feeling lonely and adrift. He also worried that Nathan had informed his wife about us, which added to his anxiety. My social life was almost non-existent, and staying inside the apartment felt suffocating. I decided I needed to start fresh, maybe by joining my coworkers for Friday meetups after work. It was time to get out and reconnect with people. Leah's perspective. I need a change of scenery. Almost 2 months have passed with no word from Nathan. It's clear he wants to end things. What did I do so wrong? He was never there for me, always prioritizing the hospital. I needed him too. I love him, but our conflicting schedules left us with little time together. I have needs as well. Colin visited me at the bank yesterday. He thinks his wife is no longer suspicious and wants to resume our affair, suggesting we use my apartment to save on hotel bills. I need closeness soon, or I'll go crazy. I hoped it would be Nathan. But without him, I might have to settle for Colin. Damn it. Nathan's perspective. Casablanca is an incredible place. Known as Al Dar al-Bida in Arabic, it's Morocco's main port on the North African Atlantic coast, with a population of about 4 million. The city blends old traditions with modern energy. While waiting for our bikes to arrive, Emma and I stayed in an inexpensive hotel. We toured the city, bought gear, enjoyed local food, and soaked in the history and culture. Due to bad weather, the ship was delayed by 2 days, so we ended up staying in Casablanca for 8 nights. Some of those nights were the best of my life, and the rest were just as enjoyable. Morocco's beauty is incredible, and so is Emma's. The more I learn about her, the more I admire her. She's not just physically beautiful but also smart, resourceful, and a talented motorcycle rider. Emma is full of common sense and knows how to handle herself in any situation. She's taught me a lot about adventure riding. Her longtime boyfriend, whom she refers to as her common-law husband, left her for another woman. She moved on, and now she thrives on the road. In Casablanca, I bought essential equipment, gasoline, oil, tools, extra LED headlights, a GPS system, top-quality riding gear, a sleeping bag, an inflatable pillow, and a small gas stove. We planned to stay in bed and breakfast inns and eat local food. Adapting to the diet was challenging at first, but Emma's support made it easier. I received a letter from my attorney saying Leah hadn't contacted me. I didn't care. She was supposed to be enjoying her time with Colin while pretending to care about me. What a load of crap. After Casablanca, we rode to Marrakesh via El Jadida and Safi. The indirect route offered a great ride and breathtaking scenery. Emma, who speaks German, English, French, Spanish, and some Arabic, was invaluable. The journey to Marrakesh took 5 days and covered over 1,300 kilometers. It was the best trip of my life. Marrakesh, a city of about 1 million people, blends old-world charm with modern energy. We decided to stay for 3 days to explore. We found an inexpensive hotel with secure parking for our bikes, including Emma's well-equipped BMW F800 GS. My Africa twin performed flawlessly, and we enjoyed every moment of the adventure. Nathan's reflection. Africa is unlike anything I grew up with. The culture, language, terrain, food, and weather are all different, yet strangely familiar. People here want the same things: to care for their families, provide food and shelter, and ensure a better life for their children. They seek peace and security, even though not all countries on this continent have stable governments. Morocco, fortunately, is better off than many. Traveling with Emma has been an education. She thrives on adventure and challenges, while I'm learning to face my own fears about new places and environments. I grew up in safe, suburban New York with a stable family and a cozy home. Not everyone has that luxury. This sabbatical has taught me that no matter where people live, they rely on family and friends and take pride in their homes, no matter how humble. Traveling opens my eyes in ways I never imagined. Emma is a wonderful companion and lover, passionate, caring, and adventurous, yet full of common sense. I feel a deep lust for her, for travel, and for this new way of life. I don't think I can return to my old lifestyle in Brighton. Emma's perspective. I really enjoy traveling with Dr. Nathan. He's a pleasure to be around and constantly amazed by the differences between Africa and the US. He's someone who's always done the right things: university, medical school, family, marriage. Yet his wife let him down, failing to support him in his profession and their shared dreams. I don't know Leah, nor do I aim to take her husband, but it seems she's done a good job of leaving him on her own. Though we've only been traveling together for a few weeks, I can tell that if things continue as they are, it will be hard to part ways when he eventually returns to work. I have my own plans to complete my adventure and write a guidebook for women who want to travel the world on a motorcycle. I committed to this project before starting my journey and want to see it through. It may not be very profitable, but I love it and believe I'm good at it. Nathan's perspective. From Marrakesh, we're heading to Leon, about 900 kilometers away, mostly along the coast. The vast, dusty landscape is breathtaking. As a novice, I've learned to respect the environment and stay alert. My American passport isn't as recognized here as an EU one, so border guards often wonder why an American is riding a motorcycle in such remote areas. One customs officer asked why I left America. I pointed to Emma, and he laughed, understanding immediately. Nathan's perspective. On our way to Leon, we camped for 2 nights far from the road to avoid thieves. The first night, I hardly slept, every rustle making me uneasy. But fatigue eventually helped me rest better the second night. Morning coffee and basic ablutions made me feel refreshed. Gasoline, water, and food were our top priorities. We never passed a chance to refuel or restock and always paid cash to avoid drawing attention. Traveling in West Africa is no less dangerous than some parts of the US, so we stayed vigilant. Expensive motorcycles like ours made us potential targets, and while my gear protected me from falls, it was no match for weapons. Having seen too many gunshot injuries in the ER, I understood the risks. Still, The journey through Western Sahara and Mauritania was unlike anything I'd ever experienced, dry, dusty, brutal, and achingly beautiful. We communicated via Bluetooth helmets, with Emma narrating fascinating insights about the region. Her non-stop talking was mesmerizing, and I loved it, even though the foreignness of it all felt daunting at times. The road to Dakar. After Léon, our goal was Dakar, Senegal, over 1,800 kilometers away. The route required 4 days of intense driving. The relentless heat and dust wore us down, but Emma constantly reminded me to stay hydrated. I emptied my 4-liter Camelback daily, and even then, it sometimes wasn't enough. During breaks, we'd find moments of levity. Once, I tried to take a photo of Emma squatting behind a bush, which led to a hilarious chase through the scrubland. The landscapes of Western Sahara and Mauritania were vast and repetitive, wide open spaces with nothing in sight. We carried extra fuel, which came in handy more than once. My Africa Twin, with its larger engine, consumed more gas than Emma's BMW, so I planned to invest in an auxiliary tank soon. We had a breakdown along the way, spending 3 hours on the side of the road fixing a punctured hose. Despite the challenges, we camped for 3 nights, relishing our time together. Even without showers, being carnal with Emma was still amazing. We used small amounts of water to wash the essentials and brushed our teeth with a cup of water each. Crossing into Senegal. We crossed the Senegalese border at Diama, avoiding the more complicated and expensive Rosso crossing. Near Diama lies St. Louis, a city divided between islands, with stark contrasts between wealth and poverty. We found an inexpensive hotel, Hotel de la Poste, which offered secure parking for our bikes and a nearby police presence that reduced crime. We rested after our desert crossing, enjoying the comforts of a bed, decent food, a hotel pool, and a laundry room. Checking my email, I saw updates from my family and lawyer. Leah had written, asking where I was and when I'd return to Brighton. I instructed my parents and attorney not to disclose my whereabouts. Leah hadn't started divorce proceedings yet, but I expected she would soon. After all, she'd been having an affair for 2 years, our marriage was over. If she didn't file for divorce, I would. A new purpose. After 2 restful days in St. Louis, we set out for Dakar, about 300 kilometers away. But our plans quickly changed when we encountered an overturned bus. A family on a scooter carrying a propane tank had hit a pothole, causing the bus to swerve and crash. The father was pinned under the bus, the children were bleeding, and the mother lay unconscious with the propane tank beneath her. I immediately ran to help. The scene was chaotic, with people trying to pull the father free while Emma attended to the children. I focused on the mother, checking for injuries and stabilizing her neck while others assessed the father's condition. Using our first aid kits, we did what we could, but the father's injuries required more than basic care. Police arrived, but they mostly directed traffic. Finally, 2 ambulances came and transported the family to the nearest hospital. Exhausted, Emma and I sat by the road, sipping water. A police officer approached me, asking why I was helping. Learning I was a doctor, he asked me to accompany them to the hospital to describe the family's injuries. We followed the police to a modest facility, where I ended up stitching the children's cuts. Despite its outdated appearance, the hospital was clean and functional. Emma assisted me, following my instructions with precision. An unexpected stay. Word of the visiting doctor spread quickly, and more patients began arriving at the hospital. What was meant to be a brief stop turned into 3 days, with me working over 30 hours straight. Emma returned to the hotel to rest while I treated burns, fractures, and infections. The local staff were overwhelmed but grateful for the help. When we finally left St. Louis, we felt a deep sense of accomplishment, and sadness, knowing the community wouldn't have regular medical care again anytime soon. Arrival in Dakar. Dakar, the capital of Senegal, is home to about 4 million people. Its contrasts were striking, luxury cars shared the streets with rickety scooters, and opulent homes stood alongside crumbling shacks. People were focused on survival, just like anywhere else. My experiences in Africa had opened my eyes to the resilience of humanity. Perhaps Leah's infidelity, painful as it was, had been a catalyst, pushing me to see the world differently. A moment of respite. To celebrate making it to Dakar, I insisted we stay at a beachside hotel. As usual, we split the cost, but this time I covered most of it, knowing Emma's finances were tighter than mine. We spent 3 wonderful days as tourists, relaxing on the beach and exploring the city. One evening, Emma confided, "Traveling with you makes me happy." I smiled and replied, "You've given me a new life." Reality creeps in. Yet, as much as I cherished our time together, reality loomed. I didn't know what the future held for me, or for us. For now, I was focused on the present, savoring the journey and the connection we'd found in the midst of life's chaos. Nathan's perspective. When I checked my email, I saw a message from the chief administrator at Brighton General Hospital. "Nathan, we hope you've enjoyed your leave and are ready to return. We agreed on 3 months with a possible extension to 6, but you must return by the 1st of next month. Due to a coworker's illness, the emergency room urgently needs you back. Please call me when you get this, we really need you." Well, crap. All good things come to an end. I decided to ignore the email for a few days and continue the trip with Emma. We'd been discussing the journey southward, which promised to be tougher and more dangerous. Eventually, though, I'd have to return to the US for work. We talked about Emma going back to Germany, but instead, we decided to ride further south to Namibia, from Windhoek to Cape Town. From Dar es Salaam, we arranged to ship our bikes and took a memorable flight to Windhoek on an old plane piloted by 2 fresh-faced young aviators. The weather was rough and windy, but we landed safely and were relieved to see our bikes waiting for us. The ride to Cape Town took 5 incredible days. Knowing our time together was nearing its end, we made the most of it. Our lovemaking was passionate and tender, and I realized I had fallen deeply in love with Emma. But reality loomed. She needed to return to work, start writing her book, and edit the hours of video she'd taken on her journey. Her publisher was pressing for progress, and funds were running low. When we reached Cape Town, we packed up our bikes, Emma's went into storage, while mine was shipped back to the US. It was a bittersweet day, knowing we were parting ways. At the airport in Frankfurt, we were quiet. Emma kissed me and whispered, "I love you." I replied, "This isn't goodbye. I'll see you again." Returning to Brighton. Back in Brighton, I stood in the hotel lobby when I heard my brother, Paul, call out to me. "Dave. You look good. Where have you been, overseas? What's going on with Leah?" "It's a long story," I replied. Paul invited me to dinner, and I agreed. It was time to get back to life at home. On my way to see him, I stopped by the hospital to meet with Dr. Johnson, the chief administrator. Dr. Johnson was happy to see me and mentioned a letter from the Senegalese government thanking me for my help in St. Louis. I explained the story about the family on the scooter, and she found it strange but admirable. The ambulance chief briefed me on updates and put me on the schedule for a 12-hour shift starting tomorrow. Tonight, though, I'd have dinner with Paul, play with his kids, and maybe enjoy a few beers. At Paul's house, his wife, Marcy, greeted me warmly. "David, how are you? We've all missed you." "I'm fine, thanks," I replied, handing out small gifts for the kids. They ran off to play, leaving Marcy free to get to the point. "What happened between you and Leah? Why did you leave?" "Good to see you too, Marcy," I said with a smirk. "A beer would be great if you have one." Paul, clearly expecting this, fetched 3 beers from the kitchen. Under their curious gazes, I began. "So, you want to know what's going on with me? What did Mom and Dad tell you?" "Nothing," Marcy said, frustrated. I even tried talking to Leah, but she wouldn't say anything, she just wanted information from me. So, what's the story? Over the next half hour, I summarized the past 5 months, touching on Leah's affair but leaving out the details of the investigator's report. Over dinner and a couple more beers, I shared stories of my travels and about Emma, who was now back in Berlin while I was here in Brighton. I told them I was looking for a place to stay until I sorted out my divorce and future plans. Traveling with Emma had opened my eyes, I couldn't go back to pretending to be happy. Returning to Brighton reminded me of my failed marriage and how easily Leah had deceived me. I resolved never to let that happen again. Leah's perspective. I learned through a colleague that Nathan was back in town, they'd seen him at the hospital. Desperate to speak with him, I tried calling his parents again, but they gave me the same response, back off. I decided to stake out the emergency room entrance. For 4 nights, I parked my car nearby, watching the comings and goings. The place was always bustling with ambulances. To pass the time, I brought a book and snacks. On the second night, I needed to use the restroom, so I went inside. A security guard asked if I needed help, and I inquired about Nathan. Doctor names are withheld unless you have an appointment, he said, directing me to the main entrance. I thanked him and left, feeling defeated. On the 4th night, I finally saw him. Nathan was walking from the doctor's parking lot to the ER entrance. My heart raced, and I almost called out to him. But before I could, he disappeared inside. Nathan's perspective. At least I knew Leah was back in town after seeing her at my door. My next step was to ensure that our conversation, however strained, would lead to the final closure of our marriage. After a few days of searching, I found a nice furnished 1-bedroom apartment near the hospital. It was small but had everything I needed. I only had to buy linens, towels, and food. The building offered underground parking and security, though it lacked a doorman. It suited me perfectly for this transitional phase. I quickly got back to work in the emergency room, facing the usual stream of emergencies: gunshot wounds, car accidents, stabbings, heart attacks, and strokes. The stark contrast between American and African healthcare struck me anew. Americans' obsession with overeating and sedentary lifestyles was painfully evident, whereas in Africa, people generally maintained better health simply because they lacked easy access to medical care. 2 weeks after returning to Brighton, I met with my attorney, Leanne, to discuss finalizing my divorce from Leah. There wasn't much to divide in terms of property or assets, and I told Leanne that Leah could keep everything in our shared apartment. She had already prepared the divorce petition, and I told her to proceed. I was surprised Leah hadn't initiated the divorce herself. I assumed she wanted to move on with her life, just as I did. Back at my apartment, I realized I needed a hobby outside of work. My Africa twin wouldn't arrive for a few months, so I decided to look for another motorcycle in the meantime. After researching online, I visited 2 local KTM dealerships and settled on the 890 Adventure R. It wasn't cheap, but I added accessories to make it suitable for long-distance riding on both paved and dirt roads. I figured it was a worthwhile investment. I had nothing else to spend my money on these days. A Guide to Divorce in New York State. Leanne explained the process clearly. In New York, you can file for a no-fault divorce if you and your spouse have lived together for at least a year or if the marriage has irretrievably broken down for at least 6 months. Leah's prolonged affair counted as an irretrievable breakdown, so our divorce would likely proceed smoothly unless she objected. If she contested, we would have to live apart for another 6 months to meet the requirements. Either way, the divorce would be final in about 6 months. Simple and easy. Or so I thought. Leah's perspective. 2 days ago, I followed Nathan after his shift to find out where he lived. He had moved just a few blocks from our old apartment. Knowing his location, I took a few days to gather the courage to approach him. Dressing in an outfit I knew he liked, skinny jeans, high heels, and a white sleeveless blouse with my hair tied back in a ponytail, I prepared myself. I brought his favorite IPA beer and a bottle of California Chardonnay for myself. Taking a deep breath, I pressed the call button for his apartment. Nathan's perspective. The intercom buzzed. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I figured it was someone selling something. Then I heard her voice. "Hi, Nathan. It's me, Leah. Your wife." Silence. "Can I come up?" she pleaded. More silence. Against my better judgment, I pressed the buzzer to let her in. When she knocked on the door a minute later, I took a deep breath. 100 questions raced through my mind, but I reminded myself that I'd moved on. I opened the door, and there she was. She looked tired but good, the woman who was still, legally, my wife. "Hi, Leah. What brings you here tonight?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Hi, Nathan. I wanted to talk to you. You've been hard to reach, and even harder to find." I walked to the kitchen, noticing the bottle of wine in her hand. Grabbing a glass, I set it on the counter. The wine had a screw cap, so I poured her a glass and handed it to her. She offered me a can of IPA beer, but I declined. "I'm on hospital duty tonight," I said, pouring myself a glass of Diet Coke instead. I gestured to the dining table. "Let's sit and talk." We sat across from each other, and I let her speak. She rambled about missing me, wanting to make amends, and even starting over. She brought up having kids and acting like a real couple again. I couldn't believe it. When she reached out, trying to touch my hand, I pulled back. "Leah, it's over. You made your choice, and I made mine. I'm filing for divorce. Let's not complicate this." Her face fell, but she didn't argue. She finished her wine, stood up, and on her way out, leaned in as if to kiss me. I turned away. Nathan's reflection. After Leah left, I locked the door and leaned against it, exhaling deeply. What had she expected? That I'd welcome her back with open arms. I took a long, hot shower to wash the metaphorical stink off me. This was it. Once my attorney finalized the papers, I'd be free to move on with my life. Leah had made her decisions, and I'd made mine. There was no going back. Leah's perspective. Nathan didn't waste time with pleasantries. He looked more serious than I had ever seen him, and my stomach knotted as I started to speak. "You scared the hell out of me when you called the hotel and told Colin I was dead. He didn't recognize your voice, but I was terrified," I said. "And then, when I got home and found your note and wedding ring." I placed his gold wedding ring on the table, hoping it would mean something to him. He stared at it, his expression unmoving, and didn't touch it. "I tried talking to your family, but none of them wanted to speak to me. Your father even told me to go to hell, repeatedly. I guess I deserved that. Ever since you left, Nathan, I've been living in some kind of hell." Nathan's reply was cold and immediate. "What did you expect me to do, Leah? I found out you'd been fooling around with Colin for 2 years and thought I wouldn't react. What kind of idiot do you take me for?" "No, wait, I already know the answer to that." "It wasn't like that," I protested, my voice trembling. "Then how the hell was it?" he demanded. "I was lonely, Nathan. You were always at the hospital, never home. And when you were exhausted. You never had time for me. I needed something," I explained, tears welling in my eyes. "So it was okay to find something with another man and ignore our marriage? Why couldn't you just talk to me, Leah? Why not tell me you were unhappy and wanted to end it? Why deceive me for so long?" Nathan stared at the table, his face set in stone, refusing to meet my eyes. He took a long sip of his drink before asking, "Did you sign the divorce papers?" "No," I replied quickly, shaking my head. "I don't want a divorce. I want us to be a family again. I'm still your wife, and I want to be your wife, the mother of your children." Nathan laughed bitterly, his tone filled with disdain. You've got to be kidding me. Are you completely delusional? No, Nathan. I still love you, very much. I know we can be good together again, I pleaded. Jesus, Leah. You're delusional. I'm not going to be your husband a day longer than I have to be. My lawyer is ready to finalize this divorce with or without your signature. Our marriage is irretrievably broken, thanks to you. It's over. You started this by cheating, and I'm just finishing it. I felt desperation clawing at me. What will it take to fix this, Nathan? To get over the divorce and become a couple again? I don't want to be married to you, Leah. You broke us. We're going our separate ways. I've had an amazing experience since leaving Brighton, and I'm not going back to my old life, he said firmly. Nathan, we can be good together. I know it. We've been through so much, I argued. No, Leah, we can't. You enjoy spreading your legs for other men too much, he said harshly. This water is poisoned, it's over. You can go back to doing whatever you like. Nathan stood up, signaling the conversation was done. I finished my wine, stood up, and tried one last desperate move. I reached out, took his hand, and kissed him, hoping he'd remember what we once had. But after a brief moment, he pulled away. Don't forget this, he said, pointing to the wedding ring on the table. I grabbed it, stuffed it into my bag, and left his apartment. As I walked out, reality hit me like a ton of bricks. We were done. Nathan was over me, and we would never have a life together again. I had loved him but cast him aside for something meaningless, something that had cost me my marriage. Colin wasn't a prize, he got what he wanted and left me with nothing. I had been so stupid. I deserved this. I needed to sign the papers and let Nathan go. Emma's perspective. Back in Berlin, I've been busy editing hundreds of hours of video, adding context, and dubbing in both English and German. It's fun but grueling work, and the past month has flown by. I've emailed Nathan a few times, sharing short clips and photos from Africa. He looks great in the videos, especially the one where he threw his motorcycle. We both laughed so much about that moment. Recently, I asked my friend Ingrid to have her husband, Nick, look into Nathan's current situation. I wanted to know what was happening with him without asking directly. Nick confirmed that Nathan was back at work in the ER and that his lawyer had officially filed for divorce. The application was registered a few weeks ago, so Nathan would be divorced soon. That's good news because I have important news for him, but I need to handle some things in the US before I tell him. I sincerely hope what I have to share will make him happy. Nathan's perspective. It's official, I'm divorced. Today, I held the papers in my hand, and the weight of it all finally lifted. I can move on. Emma calls and writes often, sharing updates about her book and videos. She sends me clips, mostly of me doing dumb things, like throwing my bike or almost running into cows because I wasn't paying attention. We laugh a lot about those moments. I told Emma about Leah's recent visit, hoping for forgiveness and reconciliation. But Leah's disrespect and betrayal were the final nails in the coffin. There's no going back. Emma listened quietly as I vented. Then, before saying goodbye, she mentioned she had an announcement for me. In a couple of weeks, she teased. But you'll have to wait. Nathan's perspective. A week after the divorce was finalized, I stood at Albany Airport, ready to board a flight to Berlin via Chicago and London. It was a 15-hour journey, and I'd arrive around noon. I needed to see Emma. It had been almost 2 months, and I needed to know if there was anything left between us. If not, I'd figure out my next steps, possibly with Doctors Without Borders. When I landed in Berlin, I cleared customs, picked up my bag, and took a cab to the Park View Hotel in Alexanderplatz. After checking in, showering, and grabbing a quick bite, I set out to find Emma's office. Using Google Maps, I walked the short 15 minutes to her building, arriving around 4 p.m. If she didn't want to see me, I'd play tourist until my flight home. The office building was sleek, modern, and buzzing with activity. I found her company listed on the lobby directory and took the elevator up. At the reception desk, a young woman greeted me in German. I switched to English and asked to see Emma Pfizer. She looked surprised, made a quick phone call, and said, "Emma, or someone else, will be with you shortly." She gestured toward a set of leather chairs for me to wait. As I sat down, she made another call, speaking quietly and glancing at me several times. People passing by also glanced at me, making me feel self-conscious. Finally, an attractive woman approached me. "Dr. Walters?" she asked, pronouncing my name with a precise German accent. "Yes," I replied, confused. "Follow me, please," she said, motioning me forward. It struck me that I had introduced myself as Nathan Walters, not Dr. Walters. They seemed to know more about me than I'd expected. As we walked through the sleek glass and steel offices, I noticed more women glancing my way. I discreetly checked my fly, it was zipped. Was there an announcement about a strange American in the building? After what felt like a long walk, I saw Emma round the corner. She was smiling and broke into a run. She hugged me tightly and kissed me on the lips, oblivious to the people watching. "My goodness, Nathan. When did you get to Berlin?" she exclaimed. "A few hours ago," I said. "I went to the hotel to clean up before coming here. I didn't want to risk getting thrown out by security for looking like a vagrant." Emma laughed and took my hand. "Come, I want to show you something." She led me to her editing room, where she worked on videos from our travels. Emma was dressed in a long black skirt and a white blouse, very different from the rugged motorcycle gear I was used to seeing her in. She looked beautiful, though my best memories of her were without any clothes at all. Over the next few hours, we caught up. She showed me clips from her work, explaining how some videos would be uploaded to YouTube while most would be available through the publisher's subscription service. "Do you have time to have dinner with me?" I asked. "I'd like to hear more about what's going on with you, and I have some things to share about my life." "How long can you stay?" she asked. "My return flight is in 3 days, but I can change it if needed," I replied cautiously. "I want you to meet my family," she said, surprising me. "I've told them a lot about you, and they're looking forward to meeting you." "Oh. I suppose I can do that," I said, unsure. "But first, I need to eat, and try a good German beer." Emma grinned. "You won't be meeting my family on an empty stomach." "But no, you're not meeting me after work. I'm leaving with you now. It's been too long since I've seen you, and I have important news to share." The hotel. Back at the hotel, Emma and I barely made it through the door before we started kissing. Clothes came off quickly, and we ended up undressed on the bed. Being with Emma again made me feel human after the nightmare of my marriage. Her touch, her laugh, her warmth, I'd missed it all. I didn't want it to end. It was nearly 9 p.m. when we finally got up to shower and head downstairs to the hotel restaurant. The food was excellent, and I enjoyed a cold German beer, while Emma ordered a Diet Coke, a surprising choice for someone who usually loved beer. "Why does your family want to meet me?" I asked, curious. "I told them about you and our travels in Africa. They're eager to meet you since you're from the U.S. My parents have visited my aunt in Florida a few times. She lives near Tampa, where it's warm and good for her arthritis." Emma laughed lightly, but there was a nervous edge to her tone. "We can visit them tomorrow if you want," she continued. "It's about a 6-hour train ride." "Where do they live?" I asked. "In the South. My dad was an engineer at Volkswagen, working on production systems. My mom's an accountant. They're both retired now. I'll call them tonight to let them know we're visiting." The news. Back in my room, Emma asked, "So, you're officially a free man now?" I smiled broadly. "Yes, and I have the paperwork to prove it." I pulled the divorce papers from my bag and handed them to her. "Congratulations," she said, examining the document. "How does it feel?" "Good. It was inevitable after I found out she'd been with her boyfriend for almost 2 years. She didn't want to be with me." "What do you want to do now?" Emma asked, her tone careful, but her expression focused. Her question had a clear motive. She was evaluating me, considering where I might fit in her life. I had a feeling that meeting her family wasn't just a casual gesture. Nathan's perspective. "I'm not sure how much longer I want to stay in Albany," I told Emma as we sipped our morning coffee. "The hospital pays well, but there's just too much history here. I need to explore more of the world. You've given me the travel bug," I added with a grin. Emma smiled back. "It's contagious," she teased. We spent the night in my hotel room, and the next morning, Emma packed a small bag at her apartment. After a few phone calls to coordinate with her parents, we took a cab to the train station. European trains were a delight, punctual, comfortable, and far less paranoid with security than airports. We settled into our seats, enjoying the scenic journey south. When we arrived in Munich, Emma's parents were waiting for us. Her father, Karl, and her mother, Maria, both in their early 60s, greeted us warmly. Emma looked so much like her mother, they shared the same eyes and hair. Her father's warm smile had clearly passed on to her, too. We piled into Karl's pristine station wagon and drove to their home, an old but beautifully maintained house filled with modern appliances. "This is impressive," I said to Karl, genuinely admiring his handiwork. "My dad's a builder, and he'd definitely approve of the work you've done here." Karl beamed at the compliment, clearly pleased. We were offered drinks, beer for Karl and me, red wine for Maria, and ice water for Emma. We settled into their cozy living room, but as the silence grew under their curious gazes, I started the conversation. The best way to get to know people is to ask about themselves, I thought. I asked Karl about his career, and he happily shared stories about his work at Volkswagen, developing production systems. Maria was more modest, but I learned she had spent years working for a prominent accounting firm in auditing. "We both retired together," Maria said, "and now we're planning to travel more, especially to warmer places. Germany's winters are too harsh for us." They hoped to buy a vacation home in Spain or Greece, somewhere warm and near friends who'd done the same. "My parents bought a big van to travel around the US, I added. "They love spoiling their grandchildren." They expected me to add to that number, but, well, it didn't work out. Dinner was being prepared in the kitchen while Karl enthusiastically talked about German engineering and his love for motorcycles. "Emma got into motorcycling because of me," he said proudly. "I've owned motorcycles most of my life. I still have a BMW 1200 for long-distance trips and a smaller bike for local rides. Maria often rides with me," he added, winking at his wife. "Tomorrow, I'll show you my bikes, Nathan. But tonight, let's enjoy dinner." After dinner, we retired to the guest room Emma and I would share. I was surprised to find fresh towels laid out for both of us in the same room. When I climbed into bed, I left my underwear on. "Why are you doing that?" Emma asked, pointing at my boxers. "We're at your parents' house. It doesn't feel right to sleep naked here," I replied. Emma laughed. "They've slept undressed their whole lives. Take it off. I want you close to me." As we lay together, Emma asked softly, "How long?" I turned to her, puzzled. "How long?" "Yes," she said, looking me in the eye. "How much time do you think?" I stared at her, confused, until I noticed the small curve of her belly. My breath caught. "You remember I'm a doctor, right?" I teased. "I know what a pregnant woman looks like. You have a small bump, maybe 3.5 months. Emma smiled and pulled out a small plastic pregnancy test with 2 unmistakable blue stripes. "I saw a doctor in Berlin a month ago," she said. "I have an ultrasound appointment next week." I sat up, stunned, connecting the dots. "I'm going to be a father," I whispered. Emma nodded, her smile radiant. I got off the bed, rummaged through my bag, and pulled out a small box. Returning to the bed, I knelt down and opened it, revealing a simple but elegant ring. "Will you marry me?" I asked. Emma's face lit up. "Yes, yes, yes," she said, throwing her arms around me. After we shared the news with her parents, Maria smiled knowingly. Mothers always know. Carl, though surprised, wasn't upset about his daughter marrying an American. We married in Berlin a month later in a small ceremony with Maria, Carl, a few friends, and some colleagues from Emma's publishing house, about 30 people in total. Back in Albany. When word spread at the hospital that I'd returned with Emma, the American doctor on a motorcycle became the talk of the town. Emma and I made several decisions, including moving to Albany to be closer to my family. Maria and Carl liked the idea of having a place to visit in the U.S. I negotiated a shorter shift cycle at the hospital, taking a slight pay cut to spend more time with Emma and prepare for fatherhood. We found a lovely 4-bedroom house near my brother Paul's place, perfect for raising children. Parenthood. A few months later, Emma gave birth to beautiful twin girls, each weighing nearly 6 pounds. We named them Sophie and Clara. Our lives became a whirlwind of feeding, diaper changes, and sleepless nights. Marcy and Maria took charge of decorating the nursery, while Carl and Paul tackled a few home improvement projects to make the house even better for our growing family. Despite the chaos, I felt happier than I ever had before. Emma had given me a new life, and together, we were building something extraordinary. Nathan's perspective. Maria and my mom became fierce competitors in the Best Grandma contest, each trying to outshine the other with gifts, ideas, and plans for the twins. Meanwhile, my dad and Carl vied to outdo each other in home renovations. They had grand ideas for the house, everything from a new deck to a custom playroom for the girls, and I decided to let them run with it. Just when it felt like life had knocked me down, something extraordinary came out of it. Losing Leah was painful, not just because of her betrayal, but because of how long she had hidden it from me. But her choices were hers, and I eventually let go of the guilt. Meeting Emma was pure chance. If I hadn't gotten a flat tire in Newfoundland while eating ice cream, I probably never would have met her. That random moment turned into the best thing that ever happened to me. Now, I had a new life, a loving wife, 2 children on the way, and a future that looked brighter than I'd ever imagined. This was the life I'd always wanted. Emma's perspective. 2 days after visiting my parents, Nathan and I returned to Berlin by train. There was so much to do, and I wanted him with me for my ultrasound appointment. Nathan spent time on the phone with his hospital and family to share our news. I overheard the chaotic calls with his parents as they shouted excitedly over the noise of his brother, Paul, and the kids. Phrases like, "David is getting married to that German girl from Africa," echoed through the phone. They were thrilled about our engagement, and especially about the twins. I informed my publisher that I would take a break but would work from home as much as possible on the book and video projects. At the ultrasound, the doctor moved the wand over my abdomen to check for the heartbeat. Nathan stared at the monitor, smiling when the rhythmic sound confirmed everything was fine. Then the doctor paused and moved the wand slightly. Nathan's face lit up as he said, "Oh, wow." I was confused until the doctor said, "Here's the second heartbeat." Nathan looked at me. "We're having twins." I cried, overwhelmed with emotion. It was surprising, but somehow it felt perfect. Emma's perspective in Albany. Shortly after moving to America, I went shopping for children's furniture at IKEA with Marcy. As we browsed the aisles, I noticed a woman staring at Marcy, clearly recognizing her. Marcy turned and greeted her, though her tone was icy. "Hi, Leah." That was it. No pleasantries, no warmth. I instantly knew who Leah was, Nathan's ex-wife. I had heard about her but never met her. Leah replied, "Hey, Marcy. How's it going?" Marcy stepped aside, and I turned slightly, revealing my very pregnant belly. Leah was beautiful, but she seemed taken aback. Marcy introduced me pointedly. "Leah, this is Emma, Nathan's wife. We're shopping for baby furniture. She's having twins." Leah nodded but didn't respond. Marcy took my hand and led me away. Under her breath, she muttered, "Strumpet." We picked up our purchases, loaded them into the truck, and stopped for a snack. Over coffee, Marcy filled me in on Leah's story. Most of it I already knew from Nathan, but hearing it from Marcy's perspective provided new insights. It was clear Nathan's family considered Leah old news, best forgotten. Nathan's perspective. That evening, when I came home, Emma and I made love. Being with her always grounded me, reminding me of how much my life had changed for the better. Later that night, as I drifted to sleep, I dreamed of us riding motorcycles together, exploring the world just as we had in Africa. While I knew those adventures might not happen again soon, Emma's enthusiasm for life and travel never dimmed. My parents offered their motorhome for family trips with the twins. While the motorcycles might gather dust for now, I could see us finding ways to incorporate the adventurous spirit that brought us together into our new life as parents. It could be fun.